Hi everyone, I'm Maddy from CSR and I'm Head of Candidate Relations. I'm here to join our first CSR Soapbox, and I have got one of my favourite clients, Steve. Steve, did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do?
Yeah, I'm Steve Middleton from M&G Fire Protection. We're based in Whittam, Essex. Company started in 1999, and we predominantly install and maintain fire alarm systems, fire extinguishers, and fire dampers. Maddy's helped us with recruitment over the last few years and asked me to do this webinar due to all companies like us having trouble with recruitment across the industry as a whole.
Okay, yeah, so basically on this episode, we're going to be talking about kind of Steve's experiences, mainly just the shortage of experience within the industry. So that leads us on to the first question. Obviously, why do you think there is a shortage in the industry at the moment, especially within the engineering side as well?
I think there's a shortage of new talent coming into the industry. If you sort of speak to colleges, there's always apprenticeships available for electricians, plumbers, gyppies, most trades. Fire and security tends to be something that not many of them know about. Recently taken on an apprentice who sort from an electrical qualification. He's going through his time at college and he's fitted in really, really well, but he didn't even know the industry existed. So I think that's the first step. It's getting new people into the industry. I think there is a shortage of skill set. There's lots of people who have been doing the job for a long time, but the skill sets don't reflect the length of time that they've actually been in the trade. So they call themselves a qualified engineer and they only really sort of scratching the basics still. I think big companies, you tend to have a set role. If you're a service engineer, you know how to use a smoke pole. If you're a commissioning engineer, you know how to use the laptop, and it sort of keeps the skill sets sort of backwards really. It doesn't give people the chance to progress. I think as a whole, the industry does need some fresh input. The few apprenticeship schemes that are running are few and far between. They're quite sort of centralised to the country. So when you're looking at a young person who possibly couldn't drive, it's hard for them to get onto the schemes and get to the training venues.
I definitely think what you said about people not knowing about the industry. When I say I work in recruitment within fire and security, everyone's like, what is that? But it's something so important in everyday life, but people just don't really think about it, do they? It's just like if you're not doing it, you're not really thinking about it, are you really?
No. And it is a very, very big industry now as well. It's growing year. There's the number of fire alarm engineers that are out on the road every day is sort of probably equal to electricians now. It's just still people don't know we exist a lot of the time.
There's a lot more competition out there as well, isn't there? In regards to trying to find engineers as well. So that's obviously the skill shortage there as well. More companies are beginning to build their fire and security before. I think Grenfell's, a lot of that's helped as well. I think people want to try and get into the fire because they know where the money's at, don't they?
Yeah, I think Grenfell is going to change the industry. I think it's a bit slow to react still. The government is still making decisions, and the industry then needs to react. Things don't move as quickly as perhaps they should after a tragedy like that. But I think we're heading in the right direction. The industry will become more regulated. At present, anyone could set up a fire alarm company as long as you can convince your customers that you know what you're doing. Away you go. Companies like ourselves who invest a lot of time and money into accreditations, training engineers, and doing the job as we should be. But we are competing against people who can go into wholesalers and buy a can of smoke for £5-6. And
it is frustrating, and then if they necessarily leave yourselves and go to another company, and then you've just given them all that training as well, that's a lot of expense for yourselves, isn't it? Do you have a policy kind of, if you give them training and stuff, do they have to stay within a certain amount of time, or?
No, it depends on the individual circumstances a little bit as well. Training is to benefit all of us. It's not just to benefit the company, not just to benefit the engineers. So it needs to be a mutual agreement. If somebody's sort of done a huge amount of training and left the following week, then we'd sort of obviously be looking contractually to have a chat about some reimbursement. If they carried on working and we've all seen the benefits, then there's no need. And it's about staff retention as much as anything else. If you treat people well, hopefully they stay. There's always a time for people to move on. It's just part of life. So sometimes you just have to accept it and sort of leave on good terms. It's I need to fall out.
Mm-hmm. And that brings me on to my next question. How do you retain your staff? Is there anything that you feel like you do that is important to you and that people feel like they want to stay due to that skill or that reason why you...
I think every company's different. A lot of people who sort of come to us through agencies certainly sort of feel they're not part of a team. So it's important everyone who's part of a team has a say in how the company's progressing. Ultimately, you can't have sort of 20 different people all making decisions, but everyone needs to have some input and what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and have a voice and be listened to. Obviously, everybody needs to be remunerated fairly for their skill set and treated well. A bit of understanding. People have personal lives and issues outside of work, and if somebody needs to leave a little bit early one day to take a dog to a vet or something, it's being understanding and working together to make their lives as easy as possible while still fulfilling a job. I think quite easy as us as business owners, it's easy to see somebody once in a month might turn up late an hour, but then you've got to also remember the 10 times that month that they've stayed late and helped you get something finished. So it's about being flexible, working together, and all working towards the same goal, and people being part of that, trying to arrange training. Training's been hard, sort of certainly the last 12 months, and also rewarding them when they do well, giving people decent vehicles, good tools to try and make the job as easy as possible, and giving them support when they need it.
I think vehicles is definitely one that's really underrated. I don't know why, but I think a lot of engineers, they feel that obviously the vehicle is something that's really important to them, but obviously it is understandable because they're in it nearly like 12 hours a day. If they've not got air conditioning and it's a hot summer's day, they're going to be sweltering, aren't they? So it is just them little things that make it important. But I do think even when you're interviewing my candidates and stuff, honesty is definitely in one of your morals, and I think it comes across like that with the candidates as well. So definitely doing that in it's just the simple stuff to retain it, isn't it, really? I think.
Yeah, I mean, most people sort of apply for a job where they know what the salary is and that's all in hand. So once they start, if they're expecting to earn a lot more than they're getting, then there's been a mistake made at interview stage, either it's been explained correctly or misinterpreted something, or heard what other agencies like yourself, Maddy, which is one of the reasons we use you, is agencies don't always give people the right information. We've had it over the years with competitors where they'll put forward a senior engineer for a junior position on the hopes that you like the person, and the package is a million miles apart. And we also get it on the other hand where they're sending a junior in for a senior position. So it's about, from day one at interview, being realistic with each other, what you're expecting of the candidate, and when they're starting, making sure you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Time is always of an essence, and training's hard to book in. It's expensive to put engineers on training, but it's vital. And from interviewing, and I'm sure you get it, training is something that a lot of engineers are asking for.
Yeah, and I suppose especially now, I think a lot of companies are thinking, okay, we actually do need to put them on the FIAs, we do need to put them on the training, because it's at the end of the day, it come down to us if anything happens, which should have been the case anyway in the first place. But
it's not just training. A lot of training sort of teaches you rules and regulations. You could do all the classroom training under the sun, but you're still not going to be a competent engineer. So once you've got that training, it's having the support to be out on the road, and if you've got a problem, knowing who to find, having the management structure in place, and the senior engineers who can go out and help people who are still learning. It's an industry where you never stop learning.
Yeah, definitely. What sort of assets do you feel, without it being a bit cliche, do you look for in like candidates? Is there anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, personality is very important. It's a customer-facing role. You could be the best engineer in the world, but if none of the customers like the engineer, then they're no good for the business. So personality, appearance, in terms of, are they turning up looking like they've just got out of bed, or do they look like they're actually going there to represent the company professionally? Honesty is obviously a big one. They're out on the road a lot. They're issued with thousands of pounds worth of tools, of stock. So having trust in people is also a very important factor to me when I'm selecting candidates. Reliability is another one. Sort of, are people going to sort of stay and get the job done if they need to? Are they determined to get the job done and provide the best customer service? Ultimately, we are a service industry, and I think sometimes it's very easy to take what we do for granted, and you get complacent testing smoke detectors or testing fire extinguishers, but it's life safety equipment, and one day it will be called upon, and it needs to work. So that sort of reliability of being determined to do the job properly and to the best of your ability, and also knowing when to ask if you're out of your depth is probably the most important characteristic.
I think it's hard. I find it quite hard to get someone with like a technical ability and someone really client facing as well. So it's just getting that equal level, isn't it? Because you don't want someone chatting away and not getting on with their job, but you need them to be friendly with the customer as well. It's just that equal level. Do you put your engineers on any kind of like general just like customer service training, or do you just feel like that's what they've got?
No, we don't, to be honest with you. I think people have either got a customer facing sort of personality or not. You can, I work for one of the big national companies, and we was put through all sorts of training onto how to talk to people, and they try and give you a list of generic answers to questions that you commonly get asked, and it's sort of trying to turn people into a double glazing salesman almost. No respect to double glazing salespeople, obviously, but you people like individuals, and you don't want a team of everybody being the same. Some jobs you need a strong personality to go in and get the job done. Other places they want someone who's a bit more laid back, and it's picking the right engineer to go to the right customers as well. Ultimately, we want to get on with our customers. We're there to support their business as well, not to hindrance. So it's important for engineers who can go in and sort of almost blend in with the company they're working at to get the service done without disrupting them too much. By talking to customers, you find out how they want you to achieve that. So if you've got bad news for a customer, they need to be told. If something's not working, it doesn't do them any favours long term if the engineer hasn't got the confidence to speak to them and tell them what the problems are. So the engineer needs to also be able to have that communication level where they can sort of discuss things honestly with the customer and explain any problems they found, as well as what they've done that's okay.
And going on to kind of like the type of engineers, obviously it's quite a weird subject that we're going to discuss. Not weird, but I just feel like in terms of diversity and stuff, there's not a lot of women out there that are wanting to kind of get into the industry or basically doing the engineering jobs at the moment. Do you find this when you're looking for engineers and stuff? Do you find there's a lack of female engineers, even obviously in the management side as well? Because I know I certainly do when I look at CVs and stuff. It's something that's definitely come apparent to myself.
It's definitely still a male-dominated industry. I think that sort of goes back sort of years and years and years in time where tradespeople were probably men, and you didn't get women tradespeople. I think all the years we've advertised, we've had one sort of female engineer apply, which compared to the number of male engineers who've had apply isn't a good statistic. We've got one female subcontractor who would hold her own against any of our male subcontractors. She's really good, but it is quite rare, and you still do get comments from customers afterwards because they're not used to seeing that.
Yeah,
so I think it will change, but it's going to take a long time.
I just think there needs to be kind of more women higher up to make maybe women feel a little bit more comfortable kind of going into the industry. But yeah, there always will be them old-fashioned comments, and hopefully it gets better as the years progress. And yeah, women do want to get into the industry because it's not that obviously no one's like recruiting them, it's the fact that there's just a lack of them out there, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it sounds cliche, but really we want the best people to do the job we can get as a company, regardless of where they're from, what they look like. We need good people. There's a shortage of people, so I don't actually think there's probably, certainly what I see, a lot of discrimination in the industry as such. I just think it is a shortage of candidates applying. what needs to change for that to happen is probably, again, going back to the apprenticeship scheme.
that was literally the question I was going to ask. So what do you think needs to be changed? Do you think it's like the younger generation, apprenticeship wise and stuff like that needs to be changed?
Yeah, I think sort of social sort of considerations moved a little bit. I think sort of a sort of female leaving school, it would be quite acceptable for them now to go onto an apprenticeship and do a trade. So it's the same with sort of young lads as well, trying to make the industry more commonly known and encourage everybody to join and give it a try. And it's not going to be for everybody, but if you get a good percentage of people sticking in the trade in sort of 4 or 5 years' time, the skill set's going to move on quite quickly. And it doesn't matter where that comes from. The more diverse, the better, and the more skill sets we can bring into the industry, the better.
Like I said, I think we both said it needs to be advertised definitely a lot more. I think people need to be more open to apprentices and apprenticeships. I think a lot of people just want an amazing skill set with 10 years experience, and they're just not out there at the moment. There seems to be a lack of.
Yeah, I think, I mean, also the way the apprenticeships are run, we're going back to sort of where we started, really, having a sort of a central system in Birmingham that somebody who can't drive can't get to for a week at a time isn't actually that realistic. It needs to be sort of more localised and more accessible. There's not many major towns or cities that wouldn't have an apprenticeship scheme for an electrician or a plumber. But not many of them do sort of fire and security. And I know certainly when we was looking, we was getting in touch with companies who run apprenticeship schemes, and they weren't even getting back with candidates. They just didn't really know what to do with us as an industry. I've spoken to a couple of specialised ones, but again, they are sort of few and far between and spread out around the country, not very accessible.
And then this is the next question, going back to when you was younger. What advice would you give anyone who's looking to get in the industry now? What kind of advice would you give?
I mean, I sort of fell into the industry by accident. I sort of started A-levels, I didn't really enjoy it, and I sort of ended up on a YTS scheme, which obviously doesn't exist anymore. So I just enjoyed the industry. I sort of worked my way through the company got bought out, I worked my way up a little bit more, decided I didn't particularly like working for a large national company, so sort of set up on my own, and that was back in 1999, so it's a long time ago now. But I was sort of lucky. I fell in with a really good company. I had a really, really good boss. A lot of the models that he taught me, I still sort of bring to the business now. And looking after the customer has always got to be number one. And that was sort of how I was brought up in the industry, and so what we still try and install in all the engineers. And
would you say, like, obviously you did yourself, but like working your way up is the best kind of career choices? Did you kind of stay at a company and then progress within that company, or did you move about? Or
I sort of only worked for the one sort of family-run business, and then they got bought out. And sort of, like I say, I didn't like the big company sort of politics, so I left and set up on my own. But the company I worked for, I might have been there the rest of my life if it had stayed a small family business. I sort of would have carried on working my way through and sort of learned a lot from them. They give me a good grounding on how to sort of look after customers and how to run a business. So I think I was quite lucky with the opportunity that almost fell on my lap. And if them opportunities come, you've just got to try and take them and make the most of them. Probably didn't realise how good it was when I was sort of 18. But sort of looking back, I think without that grounding I had, I probably wouldn't have got the business up and running as I have.
Yeah, I think this industry is always going to be a blooming industry because it's something's the necessity to everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's got to be portrayed across to everyone, because the jobs are stable, you're never going to really struggle to get a job, because this is something that people need more and more. Even with CCTV now, obviously a lot more people are just putting CCTV in systems rather than having people about, especially with the whole COVID situation.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be a job there for someone who wants to learn and is willing to progress, and I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah, I think the industry, I mean, we don't do security, as you know, but the fire industry is growing. The products are going to become sort of more technology based as future moves on, which also might help to attract younger people. certainly sort of the younger generation are generally coming out of school quite good with computers, tablets, and that side of it they seem to pick up sort of very, very easily. So I think that might help to attract people. Certainly security.
It's going that way, isn't it? It's going more that way.
IT based now than it's ever been. So you know, I think to be a security engineer now, certainly a commissioned engineer, you need to have good IT skills. You need to be able to do a bit of basic networking. So there's a whole variety of skills you learn from the trade as well. So I think as a trainee, if you come out and you learn how to network an intruder alarm or a CCTV system, and you decide you don't like it, you've got some quite good transferable skills as well into some computer networking or something. So I think across the fire and security industry, there's lots of skills. There's lots of sort of life skills, teaches you how to get on with people, have different types, different varieties all around the country in different industries, and it gives you a good understanding of sort of what goes on in the real world out there. You go to lots of different places every day of the week. It's very different to sort of sitting in an office and thinking everybody works like you do. You go around so many different types of buildings, see different processes, and some are quite interesting, some perhaps not so interesting, but it gives you a good variety as well. Stops the monotony that a lot of jobs come.
You're saving some, really, like, without again being cliche, you are saving someone's life in the long run, aren't you? If you're servicing a fire alarm, and you've got that's a job where you can be proud of it. I think in my eyes, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's something that if you was talking to people and you say you're doing that job, I think it's a job, like you said, that's saving someone's life at the end of the day.
I think a lot of people.
I think a lot of it gets forgotten. I don't know. I feel like, because it's like a job, and you go there and you do it, and you don't really think about it. But then you actually think about what you do, and you think that's a lot of responsibility for someone. That's a lot of skill that they need to have. You know.
Yeah, it is a big responsibility, and I think that's why it's important. Anyone who's in the trade, they don't get complacent with it. And if you know, I've had a couple over the years where systems we've installed have been used on real fires and saved people's lives. That's, you know, you feel like you've done a good job that day. And you know, if you've cut a few corners and the system doesn't work, you've got the other end of the spectrum where you could be in a lot of trouble, and cause you a lot of problems for the rest of your life. So it is very important people don't get complacent, and people stay focused on the job. And people do need to know that, sort of, again, when they're starting in the industry, that sort of with the job, it's, you know, it's a fairly well paid industry, but there is responsibility with it as well.
And kind of the last question that I wanted to speak to you about, is there anything that you would go back and maybe not do, or maybe give advice as in not what to do, or do you feel like you've got no regrets?
No, I think if you worry about it too much, there's always going to be regrets.
Yeah.
You can't change what you've done in the past. You learn from everything you do. So I think what you've done in the past, you sort of put behind you and move to the future. There's always going to be things that you could have done differently, you could have done better. Certainly sort of starting a business now, there's different challenges, there's a lot more technology around, so some parts of it's easier, and some parts of it be harder. So I think, no regrets. I enjoy what we do. I enjoy the industry. I enjoy meeting people from the industry. So overall, I couldn't imagine doing anything else now.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time to speak to us and sharing your experiences and your knowledge. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who's watching. Please watch out for our next CSR Soapbox. See you soon.
Thanks, Maddy.
Bye.